Well, it's hard to believe that we're getting close to the end. We have tonight, and we have Saturday night, and then Sunday's going to be kitchen cabinet remedies, and this is all going to be over. But it's not all going to be over, because we're recording this. So eventually it'll be on YouTube, and you'll have access to it. And if you want your family and friends to have access to it, they can. And if you want them to have access to it right now, then they need to get a hold of Lyndon, because he's live streaming all of this, and to be able to go from there. Again, there's a few new faces. My name is Mark Sandoval, and I am the president and medical director at Uchee Pines Institute, the health ministries director of the Gulf States Conference, the founder of Health by the Book, and Better Living Creations, and God is good. That's right. Most importantly, I'm a child of God, and almost most importantly, I'm Leetta's husband. And I have 7 children. So God is good. Now we're going to continue on from where we left off last time. And yeah, he did say 7. And that was on purpose. And so I have, we're looking at disease from a different standpoint. I really like this quote. It comes out of this book called The Ministry of Healing. It's a really awesome book when it comes to understanding health and so on. Anyways, it says, disease is an effort of nature to free the system from conditions that result from a violation of the laws of health. I want to read that again because we want it to sink in a little bit, maybe more than a little bit. Disease is an effort of nature to free the system from conditions that result from a violation of the laws of health. So if it's the nature's attempt to free the system, then is it on the good side or on the bad side? It's on the good side, that's right. So disease itself is not the problem. It's only the manifestation of the problem. The problem is the violation of the laws of health that result in conditions that the system must free itself from. So don't get caught up in the thought or the idea that the disease is the problem. The disease is not the problem. The disease is just the manifestation of the problem. The problem, again, is a violation of the laws of health. And we're told in the case of sickness, the cause should be ascertained. We should understand what the cause is, and that's a lot of why we have been going through this series all this month, is to get an idea of what the causes might be. And we are also told that sickness of the mind prevails everywhere. 9/10 of the diseases from which men suffer have their foundation here. 90% of the time, disease has its origin here, even though it has its real manifestation in the rest of the body. And so if you have somebody that is sick, if you are sick and are diseased and you want to know what the cause is, it makes sense to aim at the target. It makes sense to aim at the target. If 90% of the time, if you aim at the mind, you're going to find the answer, well, it makes sense to aim at the mind and rather than piddling around with the other 10% somewhere else. And we know that there are issues of the mind that contribute to health and disease and so on. And as we've looked at this already, we realize that you and I come with that heart on the left, that heart of human love, which its gain is to receive, and the more I receive, the more I gain. If I receive enough, I'm okay, I'm still in gain, but if I still receive, but I'm receiving less than what I expected, now I'm in loss. If I don't receive anything, I'm in loss. And if my treasure is taken away from me, the car is stolen, the computer is taken, the loved one dies, or other things like that, then I'm really at loss. And that heart that gives in order to receive back again, that heart that invests in others, that believes it's mine, it's my possession, right? It's my love that I gave away that I can expect returns from. And I produced it, and I am my own to do whatever I want to with me. Right? The foundation of that heart is selfishness and pride. That's what motivates everything that it does. And that heart ends up being a slave to others even while it believes that it's God. That's you and I. That's every one of us. Every one of us. This is how we are born, and this is how we live. And that heart cannot avoid loss. It can't. Cannot avoid loss. Loss is always a part of the equation. Because you can't control what other people say. You can't control what other people do. You can't control whether they die or whether they live. You can't control any of that. And how much they give and whether they give is up to them. And so they determine your gains, they determine your losses. You're a slave to others, and you're always subject to loss, and you can't get out of it. And a major thing that contributes to disease is that loss, that personal loss that you and I sustain. That's why in my practice so many times I see individuals coming that they have come down with significant health challenges after a loved one dies, after a divorce, after a significant loss of maybe a job or a career or other types of things like that, and then you start seeing things falling apart. Right? Now, another word that we can use for that is stress. Right? Loss is stressful. Everybody knows that stress is not good for the body. Everybody knows stress is not good for any condition, and the less stress you have, the better you do. Well, we're just putting different terms to it and making it more specific that stress really is loss. And it's dependent upon that heart that you and I live by. If we're living by that old heart, we can't get out of it. It is our life, and it is our experience. But there's another heart, right? There's another heart. And God promised that heart in Ezekiel 36, 26, and 27 when he said, I will give you a new heart and put a new spirit within you. I will take the heart of stone, that one on the left, I will take the heart of stone out of your flesh and give you, the one on the right, a heart of flesh. And what does that heart look like? Again, as a heart that operates by divine love, not human love. Instead of giving and expecting something in return, it takes from the source, who is God, and then it freely gives to others without an expectation of return. Right? Freely giving to others. Why? Because they're not your source. You don't have to be dependent upon them. You're dependent upon Him. You recognize that you're not the owner. You're not God. You're a creature that He has made. You are a son or a daughter of God. That's your identity. And since you're not God Himself, you got to go to God as your source to take what you need. And it's your joy to give it away, right? It's your joy to give it away. And you recognize you don't possess anything. It doesn't belong to you. God said, all the gold and silver is mine, says the Lord. Well, that includes all the gold and silver in your bank account and in your whatever, and all the cattle on 1,000 hills and the 1,000 hills that the cattle are on. All the earth and everything is His. It's not ours. We're just the stewards. We're not the owners. We're just the stewards. And this heart knows that. I don't have it. I don't possess it. I can't produce it. I'm not my own, and so therefore I'm dependent upon Him. And my gain is to give. And the more I can give, the more gain I have. Right? You can take the homeless woman with her children to the store, and you can take them shopping and get what they want. And that gives you a lot of joy, a lot of purpose, a lot of meaning. But if you can take her to this, if you can buy her a house and give her a home to live in, if you can get her a car, a vehicle for her to go around in, if you can get her into a job or a situation where she can support her children, that gives you so much more joy to be able to do that. The more you give, the more joy you have. And so that heart's gain is giving. But how does it lose? It loses if it keeps it to myself. So you need love? Well, hey, come to God. He has all the love you need. Take it. But then give it away. Right? Give it to others. Love others in return. You need forgiveness? Come to God. Take all the forgiveness you need. But then give it away. Forgive others. Because the moment you hold on to it, you lose it. And so this heart is free. It's free from the slavery to others because it's no longer dependent upon them whether they give or not. That doesn't even enter into the equation. It doesn't, you know what? Losing loved ones, having people die, that doesn't enter into the equation either because they weren't your source. God's your source. And you can lose them, and you can, yes, there's sorrow there is. But you can do so with a certain joy of looking forward to the reunion to come. And you can do so with gratitude for God allowing you to have those years together and those smiles and those memories and all that kind of stuff. So even though they might not be here now, you can be grateful to God for the time that He did give and that you were together. And so there's that gratitude. That heart on the right, it is what takes away the losses. It's what saves us from, protects us from those losses. And when the loss that is the major cause for disease is removed, what must happen to the disease? Yeah. Well, if you remove the cause, the effect has to begin to go away. Right? It has to begin to go away. Why have we been talking about a whole bunch of spiritual themes and that kind of stuff all this month long, and it seemed like it was more of an evangelism series than it was a health series? It's because we got to get here. We've got to understand this. If we don't understand this, we can toy and monkey around with lettuce and nuts and seeds, and we can toy around with exercise and so on. And that's important. It's necessary. We got to have those things. Those are healthy. Participate in those too, yes. But we got to get to the bottom of it. We got to get to the heart of it, where the origin of disease comes from, the majority of disease. We got to go there. Well, is disease only a love problem? No, it's not. But 90% of it is. Right? So go there first. Look there for the problem first. So in searching for a cause, we should start here. So in the case of sickness, the cause should be ascertained, but also unhealthful conditions should be changed. That's appropriate to change unhealthful conditions. So we can come to our ninth point, and that is to use natural remedies and to change our lifestyle. That's appropriate. It's appropriate to do in the case of sickness and seeking for health and healing. So, lifestyle change. What kind of lifestyle changes? Well, we like the wellness acronym, and so that stands for water. Water is good. God made us. That's one of the things that we need. We need water. You don't need Mountain Dew. You don't need Dr. Pepper. You don't need tea and coffee. And you don't need beer. You don't need radiator fluid. You don't need car oil. You don't need, all those are liquids. Right? But God created us for water. How much water should you be drinking? Well, you should be drinking about an ounce of water for every 2 pounds that you weigh every day. So you go drinking every day, and if you're out there working and sweating, or you've got a fever and you're sweating, you need to drink more. And if it's hard to get in that amount of water, it's a great incentive for a weight loss program. And by the way, water doesn't have any calories. So the more of it you drink, you don't gain weight unless you're retaining water, and then there's a problem with the kidneys or the heart or something from that standpoint. And then that needs to be checked out by your doctor. But if you're not retaining water, drinking a whole bunch of water isn't going to make you gain weight. It's got no calories, 0 calories. And guess what? If you're full of water, you're full. You don't have much room to eat other things, so it actually works well for a weight loss program. But water can be used not just internally. It's good to drink it. That's really, really important. But externally too, it's good to bathe. Sometimes people are shocked by that message. Huh? Yeah, have you had your bath this month? Huh? Huh? You mean we're supposed to bathe at least every month? Wow. No, it should be a little more often than that, right? Slightly more often than that. I don't know that there's necessarily an ideal scale from that standpoint, but you should be clean often. And when you aren't clean often, and then you sweat into your clothes, and then your clothes come rubbing back in, on you, you've got pores in your skin, and those pores can absorb a lot of stuff back again. And so you can be putting out a lot of toxins, and then you can be absorbing the toxins all right back in. So it's good to bathe yourself. It's good to wash your clothes. It's good to brush your teeth. It's good to clean your ears, right? Of course, how you clean your ears is always in debate. But anyways, it's good to take care of yourself. Water is good. Take care of yourself. But you can also use water as treatments. You can always use it. You can use it as treatments, and it's quite powerful. Go get in a contrast shower and go between hot and cold and hot and cold and hot and cold. It's a good stimulator of your immune system. Gets you going, right? Taking a hot bath when you're feeling sick or fevered. Putting your feet in hot water right when you start feeling that scratchy throat or whatever. All of those are things that are beneficial for water. Then there's exercise. E is for exercise. So we've got water and exercise. Exercise is really good. It doesn't have to be anything more complicated than walking. Really, that's, it doesn't have to be worse, harder than that. Walking, most people can walk. Some people are limited from that standpoint. And if so, then there are chair exercises that can be done. And, simple small weights and other things like that. If you don't have weights, maybe you have a water bottle. Water bottle is weight, unless you've drank it all. And so, you can use it to do some simple exercises with and so on to keep active. There's a lot of research that shows that if you are sitting for prolonged periods of time, then that has detrimental effects on your health too. So every half an hour or so, get up. Move around. Maybe even having an ergonomic desk that you work at if you're one that works and does that so that you can stand. How much exercise do you need? Well, you need enough. And then maybe a little more. Right? How much is enough? Well, the general recommendations are at least 30 minutes a day, 5 days a week of cardiovascular exercise, and at least 2 days a week of resistance exercise. That's where you're lifting weights, you're using resistance bands, you're doing some kind of exercise against gravity, so you're causing those muscles to exert themselves against an opposing force. And target every major muscle group, your thighs, your glutes, your back, your abs, your chest, your shoulders, your arms, and do that at least twice a week. Those are the general recommendations. And then if you're looking for additional health or weight loss or whatever, double it. Instead of 30 minutes a day, 60 minutes a day, 5 days a week, and so on. Living temperately. That's our first L for wellness. What does that mean? What is temperance? Temperance is avoiding everything that's bad for you, and it's using wisely those things that are good for you. What are things that are bad for you? Name some things that are bad for you. Okay, fried food. All right. Sugar. All right. Well, we live on sugar, but too much sugar and white sugar and, All right. What else? Salt. All right. Well, if you avoid salt entirely, you're going to die. So it's a good thing, but too much salt, that's definitely a problem. Other things that are bad for you? Alcohol, that's right, definitely. The world has the idea that, if you have, 1 or 2 drinks a day, that can be healthy for the heart. We learned in medical school that alcohol actually is cardiotoxic. it's not the alcohol that actually has any protective effect with the heart. It's the resveratrol in the grape skins that's the beneficial aspect. So if you really want health benefits when it comes to, the grapes, drink Welch's grape juice. It's got the grapes and the seeds and everything else in there, and then you don't have the side effects of the alcohol. And there are, I don't know how many deaths around the world because of alcohol-related conditions and alcohol-related driving, and there's all sorts of alcohol-related stupidity that happens around the world. And then people wake up from it and they go, what did I do? And then they find out what they did. And then they're paying child support and they're doing this, or they're in jail, or they're other stuff like that. So yeah, definitely alcohol is one of the things you would avoid. But what else? Right, yeah, so God never intended for you to breathe plants. Roses, yeah, and the odor or whatever, but not to burn a plant and smoke it. Right? God never intended for that. So whether it's tobacco or whether it's marijuana or whether it's whatever else you throw in there and you smoke it, God did not intend for that to happen. And it's got its consequences. That would be something to avoid as well. Street drugs, maybe? Yeah. Well, that meth is probably not that good for you. Neither is the cocaine or other things like that. Everybody thinks marijuana is the next greatest thing out there in this world. It's got its issues too. And so those are things that you would avoid, but what about using wisely things that are good? Well, like you mentioned, salt. Salt is good, but you got to use it wisely, because if you use too much of it, well, you can develop high blood pressure and other complications over time. If you use too little of it, you can have neurologic problems, weakness, other issues, some swelling issues in the brain, and so on. Water, well, hey, water's good. Use it wisely. But you can kill yourself with water. You can drink too much of it and die. It's crazy. You really got to work at it to do it, but you can. Food is good. Well, okay. The food God created us to eat is good, but even that you can overdo, and you can just pig out on it and, then it's not good anymore. So temperance is using wisely those things that are good and avoiding everything that is bad for you. Love. Well, I'm not going to go deep into that. We've been there all month long. Right? We need God's love. We need to come and take from His love. He's the only source of it. And then give it away to others freely, regardless of what they do with it and so on. We need that love. We are made for it. We need nutrition too. And what is proper nutrition? Well, God gave us the original diet in Genesis 1:29. Said, eat the fruit of the tree and the herb of the field. Right? And so we got fruits, nuts, seeds, and grains. That was the original diet. And then, what about vegetables? Well, vegetables came in Genesis 3:18. That was actually a concession after sin. So if you don't like your greens, there's a reason you don't like your greens, because it was not in the original diet. Did I hear an amen back there? All right. Yeah. Well, we need vegetables now. It was after the tree of life was taken away. They didn't have access to it anymore. And again, in Genesis 3:18, vegetables became part of the diet. When did animals become part of the diet? After the flood. That's right. And was it like God said, oh, hey, animals are good to eat now? No, it was a concession to the fact that Noah and his family had come out of the ark. Everything had been destroyed. It takes time. I mean, it takes 5 years for an avocado tree to be able to grow up and actually produce avocados. It's going to take a couple of years of having vines growing before you're going to get a crop of grapes off of them. Now, some things will come quicker, but Noah and his family, they had to pack that ark full of food, and they were on it for a whole year, but they had to pack enough food so that they could survive on after they got off. And, in that time, God said, okay, well, you can eat it, but there was already the prohibitions in regards to unclean meat versus clean meat at that time. Because how many unclean animals went onto the ark of each species? 2 by 2. And of the clean animals, 7 by 7, that's right. So there was even a distinction all the way back then before the flood between clean animals and unclean animals. And then Leviticus 11 gives us an idea of what clean animals are. You know, they have a split hoof, they chew the cud, and they're not carnivores. If there's anything that's a carnivore, it's not a clean animal. If it eats other animals, it's not clean. And if it eats dead stuff, it's not clean either. You know, so if it's a carnivore, if it's a scavenger, not clean. If it has a cloven hoof, but it doesn't chew its cud, not clean. Like the rock hyrax or something like that. Camels are unclean, by the way. So if you've ever had camel hump, don't eat it again. You're like, well, any of you eaten alligator tail? Yeah, that's not a clean either. That's one of the unclean ones. And then from sea life, if it has fins and scales, then it's clean. If it only has fins but not scales, it's not clean. So catfish is not clean. If it has scales but no fins, I don't know what that would be, but that's not clean. And if it doesn't have scales or fins, it's not clean. So most of your seafood and, you know, crabs and creepy crawlies and lobster and other things like that, unclean. Why? What do? They eat dead stuff and poop and residue off the bottom of the ocean, right? They're the sewer cleaners. You know, do you want to eat sewer cleaners? No, that's all unclean stuff. And of course, in this whole foray into sin and the existence that we've been in, God has a plan for us, and He's looking to restore us back to the plan that He has. He's looking to restore us back to an Eden-style life, isn't He? Yeah, because that's what He created us for in the beginning. We've been just slipping away all the time, and God is looking at getting us back. So let's do a mental activity now with food. Close your eyes. All right. Imagine with me that you're in heaven right now. And we're going to have that feast with Jesus, the feast of the marriage supper of the Lamb. And we're all going to eat together, and Jesus is there, and the angels are there, and there's this long big table that's set before us, and each of us is sitting there. What's on the table, right? Anybody see KFC there? No. All right. Snickers bars? No. Dr. Pepper? No. All right. What's to drink on the table? Water. All right. Anybody see roast pig? No. Chicken? No. What do you see? Fruits. All right. You see nuts. Okay, you can open your eyes, right? Even in our fallen state, when we think about heaven and being restored back to heaven, we see the original diet. Right? You don't think you're going to get to heaven and chase a chicken down, cut its head off, bleed it out, pluck its feathers off, and then cut down some tree that's living and burn it so that you might... No? No. No! Come on! No! God didn't create us for that in the first place. It's not the best thing for us now, and He's trying to get us back to the original. And so, we need to be eating those plant foods and staying away from the animal ones. That's one of the two major things when it comes to nutrition and health. The one major thing is, if it can run, swim, or fly away from you, if you try to kill it and eat it, don't. Right? If it can run, swim, or fly away from you, if you try to kill it and eat it, don't. Or, if it has a face or a mother, don't eat it. And part B of that is, if it squirts out, falls out, or runs out of something like that, don't eat it either. Eggs, dairy, that kind of stuff. High cholesterol, high fat, and so on. Point number 2, getting excited up here. Point number 2, when it comes to nutrition, the closer it is to how it grows, the better it is for you. The closer it is to how it grows, the better it is for you. Okay. So potatoes are better for you than potato chips. Okay. Avocado is better for you than avocado oil. Tomatoes are better for you than pizza. That's right. When it's in its natural state, it's going to be best for you. The closer it is to how it grows, the better it is for you. So the more processed it becomes, the less healthy it is for you. So if you stay away from processed foods or highly processed foods, and if you stay away from animal foods, you know what that will do? The research shows you'll live about 10 years longer, and you'll cut out almost all the diseases that people have. I mean, you cut your risk for it, or if you have it, you'll start reversing it like crazy. In our center, that's what we do. We help people to reverse their diseases. We help them get off their medications, and we do so with a plant-based diet. We can't do it with an animal-based diet. Can't. And I know many, many centers around the world, because we network. None of them are using animals in their diet. Why? You can't reverse disease and still keep the animals in the diet, or the animal byproducts. So it's a plant-based diet. Well, E stands for environment. Environment. So environment is important as well. Part of that environment, we're going to look at our stand principles under environment, and that includes sunshine. Sunshine's very good for you. The dermatologists tell you stay away from it. It'll kill you, but don't believe the dermatologists. They are killing everyone. In fact, one very interesting review article looking at all of the diseases related to vitamin D deficiency, because if you have low vitamin D levels, your risk for developing all sorts of diseases goes up significantly. So now with these messages that sunshine is bad and stay away from the sun and keep your skin all nice and whatever and avoid skin cancer, well, people are not getting the sunshine, they're not getting the vitamin D, and now they're getting so many other diseases related to vitamin D deficiency that if we actually just got everybody out and got the sunshine that they needed, so that their vitamin D levels were where they needed to be, for every one person that developed cancer, skin cancer, more than now, you would have 99 people that would not die from some other condition related to vitamin D deficiency. So it's true that if we got more sunshine, you'd have more people developing skin cancer and some more people dying from skin cancer, but you would have vastly more individuals not dying from other conditions because of vitamin D deficiency. So get that sunshine, it's really good for you, and it's not just vitamin D and that whole aspect of it, it's also mood and so on. Sunlight is good for the mood. It's helpful, it's beneficial. You'll get that blue light, especially early in the morning, and you start converting tryptophan to serotonin in the back of your eyes, in the retina. And serotonin is, it's a neurotransmitter there in the brain that helps with some positive aspects. And of course, certain drugs for depression target serotonin as one of their targets. And then at nighttime, when things are dark, and usually after midnight, closer to 2 o'clock, and from there, then the serotonin starts getting converted to melatonin in the pineal gland. And that melatonin is your wake-sleep cycle hormone. And so it helps you with, the sunlight actually helps you with rest. It helps you with the vitamin D and all those deficiencies that go along with it. And there's some interesting research that shows that if you eat green leafy plants that have chlorophyll in it, you get some of the chlorophyll in the bloodstream, and it goes circulating around to the different parts of the body. It actually gets through in a whole form. And when the light strikes it, by the way, sunlight is pretty bright, and it'll go through your body. You don't think so, but at night, have you ever done the flashlight trick? You get the flashlight and stick your finger over it, and your finger glows like E.T. You're like, hang on, E.T.? Well, that's my day. All right. Your finger glows at night when it's dark, and you put the flashlight through and see it glowing nice and orange, and you can put it under your hand, and if it's bright enough light, you'll see your hand glowing orange. Well, when you and I go outside, the sunlight is thousands of times brighter than that flashlight. And so when we go outside, we glow. That light goes through us, we glow. In fact, some researchers calculate or postulate that it's bright enough inside our skulls in daylight to actually be able to read. If you were inside your skull and you had a book, the amount of light coming in there is bright enough to be able to read by. So light goes through you, and the reason that you don't see yourself glowing when you're out in the sunlight is because everything around you is so much brighter. And so the contrast is so great. You just don't see it. Well, when the sunlight strikes that chlorophyll, it activates it, and you start actually restoring CoQ10, coenzyme Q10, ubiquinone. And it has its broken down form, and it gets built back up with that. And CoQ10 is a prominent antioxidant in your cells, and it's part of the Krebs cycle that helps with energy production too. So that's pretty cool. Thought life, what you think, that's part of your environment too. It's the internal environment, and we've been talking all about that, so I don't have to really go into it because we've been talking a lot about that. Think well of others, love them, right? And take that love from God, and overcome the negative thoughts like we talked about before. Air, very good. It's good to have air. You don't have air, you're not going to make it very long. It's good to have clean air and pure air, and of course the more country you are, the more pure air that you can have. If you're not country, well, the more plants that you have around you, the more pure air that you can have. If you do mostly of an indoor existence, well, become an indoor farmer. Like have plants and stuff around that you take care of. It's shown, there's research that shows the air quality inside a home that is growing plants is significantly better than those that are not, right? Of course, you can open up the doors, let the wind blow in, and so on. When you have the windows closed and the air recirculating, which is what pretty much all of our heater and air conditioning systems do, they just recirculate the same air around and around and around, and you breathe in and you breathe out and you breathe in and you breathe out and you breathe in and you breathe out, and you just recirculate it, and then stuff, you get off-gassing from the carpet and other things like that. The air quality inside of a closed building is significantly worse than if you're outside. So if you got windows that you can open and doors that you can open and let things breeze through, that would be very good. Air is good. Maintain good posture, and don't mess up your air with this. Right? Whether it's you're actually using heat to turn something to smoke and then to breathe it that way, or whether you're using an ultrasound device to turn something into vapor and bring it. Both of them are killing people. Vaping is associated lung disease. A lot of people are dying from that now. So it's killing people. Nature. Yeah, it's a good part of the environment too. You ever notice that you're different when you're out in nature, like you're in a park and you see the grass and the flowers and you see the nice sunshine and the blue sky and the birds that they're coming around and they're doing all of that. Isn't that it makes a difference? It does. It makes a difference. The research shows that when you're out in the environment, there are improvements that happen as far as your health is concerned. Blood pressures come down, heart rates come down. There's improvements as far as healing and immune function and so on. Just being in nature, being exposed to nature. So use that to your advantage. Get out there in nature, and then dress. Dress is the microenvironment. Like we've got the macro environment around us, the big environment, but you create your own environment by your dress. And that impacts health as well. How you dress impacts your health. You don't see it because it takes a long time for it to develop. Right? But what are some general principles when it comes to dress as it relates to health? Well, one of those is no tight bands. Right? No tight bands. So if you have restrictive clothing that is keeping one mountain up and dividing it from another mountain, then it should be loosened a bit. One of the ways of checking whether you do not have restrictive clothing is if you raise your hands up and your clothes come up when you raise your hands up? Well, that tells you you do not have restrictive clothing. But if your hands come up and your clothing starts coming apart, well, then there might be some tight parts, and especially if you have tight stuff around the abdomen, well, that can create all sorts of digestive issues. GI complaints, it can contribute to bloating and abdominal pain, reflex esophagitis, and other things that can be associated with it too. Menstrual cramping and having menstrual PMS, well, not PMS, but having dysmenorrhea. So you're having a lot of pain around your menstrual cycle. A lot of times that can be related to having tight bands around the abdomen. So if you switch to dresses where you're not having the tight stuff around there, sometimes that can help out quite a bit with that. Another principle when it comes to dress is cover evenly. Right? Cover evenly. So if you're one that likes tank tops and shorts, you're not exactly covering evenly. You got more of a layer here, and you got less of a layer, there, and that changes circulation. Where you have colder exposure, you're going to have blood vessels that constrict. You're going to limit blood flow to those areas, and where you have warmer areas, the blood vessels are going to dilate. You're going to have more blood flow and accumulation of blood in those areas. And so if you dress with the limbs uncovered and everything else covered, then you're going to accumulate blood in this area, and you're going to deplete blood from these areas, and then you get constantly cold hands and cold feet. You start developing things like spider veins, and you have circulatory issues and all of this that develops over time. So yes, no tight bands and even covering. Right? Those are two major principles when it comes to dress. Your S is sufficient rest. Rest is a good thing for many different things. There's some research that shows that if you sleep deprive healthy individuals for long enough, you can start developing diabetes in them. So actually sleep deprivation can be a causative factor in the development of diabetes. We know that if you don't sleep well, your blood pressure is higher the next day. And we see that at our center. If we're watching, we're looking at blood pressures from a day-to-day basis, and somebody's blood pressure is up a bit the next morning, my first question is, how'd you sleep last night? And usually their response is, lousy. Yeah, well, I see it in your blood pressure. And there's all sorts of other things related to it, not just how tired you are and how you perform, but all that has to do with it as well. Sufficient rest is very important. Your immune system is dependent upon that. When they take rats and they sleep deprive them, so when they start falling asleep, they shock them, and then they start falling asleep, they shock them again, and they shock them again, they keep them up. Well, rats can last for about 2 weeks without sleeping. About 2 weeks, but they die about 2 weeks into it. You know what they die of? Infection. They die of infection. Because the immune system is depressed by not sleeping. And there's some research that shows, with Alzheimer's disease, you have this beta amyloid plaque that kind of develops in the around the neurons that's associated with some of this breakdown or degradation of the neurons. Well, that beta amyloid, you actually have sort of a lymphatic system in the brain. It was one of the most recent discoveries in anatomy. I mean, they thought they had all of anatomy figured out. And within the last 5 to 7 years or so, they figured out that the brain actually has a lymphatic system, and it actually washes out beta amyloid. But you know when it does the washing out of beta amyloid? When you're sleeping. That's right, when you're sleeping. So if you're sleep deprived, you're not getting the sleep, it's not washing that out as much. You can get more beta amyloid accumulation, and it might put you at more risk for developing Alzheimer's dementia later on in life. So sleep is good. Get your sufficient rest. And then finally, simple trust in God. Why is that important? Because you can't do it. You can know it, but you can't do it. You got to have power to be able to do it. And it takes self-control to be able to do it. And it has to have the right motivation in order to do it. And you can't come up with the right motivation, so you need God, and you got to trust in Him in order to give you that power, to give you the fruit of the Spirit, which includes self-control, and to give you love, which is the proper motivation to actually do all of that stuff. So those are your wellness principles. So when there's disease, which is not the problem is a violation of laws of health. When there's sickness, the cause should be ascertained. And 90% of the time, it's here, right? 90% of the time, it's here, and it has to do with that old heart and the losses that we sustain. That's the major portion of it. But also, unhealthful conditions should be changed. So we got lifestyle change, and then wrong habits corrected. What wrong habits? Well, we got wrong habits of dressing poorly for the weather. We have wrong habits of thinking negative thoughts. We have wrong habits of, well, yeah, that stuff. And switching that for things that are much better for you. Those habits need to be corrected. And then nature is to be assisted in her effort to expel impurities and reestablish right conditions in the system. Nature assisted in her effort to expel impurities. So, what are the organs that expel impurities? All right, so the kidneys do. What else? The lungs do. The liver does. And your skin, right? So your skin, your lungs, your liver, your kidneys, those are the major organs for getting rid of impurities, of expelling impurities. And so you want to treat the skin well, you want to treat the liver well, you want to treat the kidneys well. How do you treat the kidneys well? Yeah, drink a lot of water. That's right. And exercise, all right? That does good for the kidneys. How do you treat your liver well? Well, don't fill it with all the stuff that's going to kill it. Alcohol is horrible for the liver, right? Tylenol, horrible for the liver. More people die from Tylenol overdose than pretty much any other medication that's out there, and it causes liver failure. It'll kill the liver. And then if you have other medications that have Tylenol as a part of it, or acetaminophen, then that can be a problem as well. And then, don't eat all the bad stuff, because it's going to process it, Treat it well. And the skin, well, bathe it and use that hydrotherapy. Get out there and exercise and sweat. Get in a sauna or something like that, or a hot tub or a hot shower. Sweat. Expel those impurities. And so all of that is appropriate. It's appropriate to exercise. It's appropriate to use herbs. It's appropriate to have a healthy diet. It's appropriate to use hydrotherapy treatments and so on. In the case of sickness, it's good to do all of that. All of that. But don't forget something that the Bible tells you to do. And we find it in James chapter 5 and verses 14 to 16. It says, "Is there any among you sick? Let him call for the elders of the church and let them pray over him, anointing him with oil in the name of the Lord. And the prayer of faith will save the sick. And the Lord will raise him up, and if he has committed sins, he will be forgiven. Confess your trespasses to one another and pray for one another that you may be healed. The effective, fervent prayer of a righteous man avails much." Beautiful. So many people that I take care of, they've done everything else. They have gone to the hospital. They've been going to the clinic. Now they're doing chemotherapy. They've done that, and they've done 2 rounds of it. Then they're doing what's the term? Experimental, stuff, and then they come to Uchee Pines as a last hope, and hopefully we can fix them. And you know what? They never got anointed, ever. Oh. But the Bible admonishes it, so it's a good thing to do. So don't forget that one. So why do I adopt a healthy lifestyle? Why do it? Well, because God loves me. And He purchased me at an infinite price. You remember that infinite price? We were talking about the stars and everything. What a beautiful infinite price that God paid for us. And because He loves me, I love Him. And I want to take care of my body in proportion to the price that He paid for it. Right? I want to take care of myself in proportion to the price that he paid for it. I am worth it. I am not Walmart vase material that can just be dropped and broken and I get frustrated because there's a mess on the floor. We are Ming Dynasty China. Right? He paid that price for us. We are worth it. Treat yourself like you're worth it. And then live as healthy as possible to preserve your body, which is his temple. Right? He wants to live in us. He wants to dwell in us. You want to give God a dirty place to live? You know, like, oh, well, we didn't dust this place out for the last 10 years, and you can sit over there. You know? No, you don't want that. You want to give him the best. 1 Corinthians 6:19 and 20. Or do you not know that your body is the temple of the Holy Spirit who is in you, whom you have from God, and you are not your own? For you were bought at a price. What kind of price? Oh, a priceless price, a precious price, an amazing price. Therefore, glorify God in your body and in your spirit, which are God's. So, why do we obey? Why? Are we looking for healing? What's our motive? Why do we do what we do? Well, the why is at least as important as the what. Do I obey in order to be healed? No, because that's operating under the old system of giving to receive. Right? I would be giving God obedience in order to receive. It's a way of, it's kind of a subtle form of manipulation, coercion. Here, God, I'll do this for you, you do this for me. Bartering system. Real love doesn't operate that way. No, I obey because I love God. Because I want to return to him gifts of service and gratitude for all that he has given to me. That would be taking a give. That's divine love. And that's the real motivation behind obedience. Right? And taking God's gift of love transforms me. It does. It changes me. When I eat from that love, that buffet becomes mine, and I bring it in, I'm changed. And love loves to obey. It does. Love loves to obey. Because you fall in love with somebody, how easy is it for you to do a billion things? Right? To go here and to do that, and they want this. Oh, it's easy to go do that. It's easy to serve. It's easy to do all of those things. Why? Because you're in love. Love will do a billion things and be happy while it does it. But you know what? Doing a billion things will never make you love. Right? You can try to paste on a billion things, and you can try to do them so that you might love. It won't work. But it goes the other way. When you love, you'll do a billion things. Love makes me obedient, even in taking care of my body. Jesus tells us in John 14:15, if you love me, keep my commandments. And he says in 14:21, he says, he who has my commandments and keeps them, it is he who loves me. True obedience is the fruit of love. True obedience is the fruit of love. Now remember, the law of cause and effect. My disease must have a cause. And the cause always comes before the disease is present. So if I'm looking for the cause, I've got to find something that was there before the disease began. But it's still there. It was there before the disease began, but it's still there. If it's something that happened since the disease began, it's not the cause. Because the cause always comes before, and the effect always comes after. So as long as the disease is present, the cause or its secondary causes are still present. Because if the cause is a love issue, if it's a sin issue that we've been talking about this whole month, I can do everything to change my life. I can do everything with medications or surgery or whatever it is. And if it actually takes away the effect, if it actually takes away the disease or its manifestation, something else will come. It's guaranteed. Something else will come. Because if the thing you do to treat it does not take away the cause must manifest itself somehow. And if what you did took away its manifestation, the effect, then the cause has to produce another one to show that it's still there, right? So you might do something. You might take medication to take blood pressure down. But in taking that medication to take the high blood pressure down, if it succeeds, but you have not removed the cause, and the cause still remains, well, you might just end up with a stroke or some other complication. So the cause must be identified and removed, and once the cause is removed, the effect can begin to go away. This is why we need to understand the law of cause and effect, because if we don't understand it, we'll never approach disease and its treatment the right way. We'll always go about just dealing with symptoms and taking this pill and that one and this thing and that thing and never going for the cause. We've got to understand this. We've got to go for the cause. And in the meantime, yes, I apply lifestyle changes. I use natural remedies. I look at ways of helping eliminate toxins and so on. I pray and I trust God to work this out in His time and His way. And if I don't know the cause yet, well, I can pray and I can say, Lord, you know the cause. I don't. I'm looking for it. But I'm not going to go about anxious and chewing off my fingernails and staying up late at night worrying about all of this. I'm going to trust you that you will show me, and I'm open to seeing the answer. And then when I see the answer, we can work on this thing together. Right? So you do so in prayerful trust, right? In prayerful trust, not in anxiety and so on. Now, all laws that govern function are fixed. They're unchangeable, just like the law of gravity. Right? And the laws of thermodynamics. They are what they are, and they remain what they remain, because they govern the function of something. The law of body temperature is what it is. Well, what about God's law? The law of life? Well, yeah, it's God's law. It's the law of love. It's the law that governs the function of love and shows what love is like. It's a functional law. So it as well cannot be changed. And when that law is disobeyed, whether one knows that they're disobeying it or not, there are consequences, right? And there are health consequences associated with it as well. The end of health consequences is death, and of course God told Adam and Eve, if you eat of this tree, you will die. All right, that's the end point of those consequences of disobedience. And so they're there. Did Adam and Eve know really what they were getting into? No. They didn't know what sin looked like. They didn't have a clue of all that was coming along, but they were warned, don't go there. And what they do? They went there. That's right. You see, you don't have to know all the consequences to be a recipient of all the consequences. You just have to go where you weren't supposed to go. Whether you knew about it or whether you didn't. You jump off the building, whether you knew you were jumping off the building or not, well, you're still going to meet the ground going pretty fast on the way down. And the acceleration might be fun, but the deceleration is not. And you'll suffer the consequences of it, whether you intended to jump off or whether you didn't. And obedience as well has consequences to it, whether you knew you were obeying or whether you didn't. You know? If you didn't know that you were obeying some kind of law, but you were anyways, you get the benefits of it. You know? If you didn't know that there was a law of water concentration in the body, but you were drinking water because you were thirsty and you were keeping up with it and so on, well, you get the benefits of having done so, even though you didn't know there was a law that you were following. But there is, right? And the more you know of it, the more you can consciously cooperate with it. Right? The more you know it, the more you can consciously cooperate with it. And that's a very good thing. Very good thing. So, we've talked about a lot of stuff. And we have one more point. Point number 10. And we're not going to go over point number 10 now because we got to save something for Saturday night, right? At 6 o'clock when we'll be coming back together again. We're going to have that last point. We're going to do a summary, and then we're going to use we're going to look at some biblical examples of how this works and what happens when it does. It's really awesome. But, a lot of people, when they get into some kind of, they learn about something and they start trying it out, guess what they do? They fall down, right? They fall down. They fail. How many people, when they start trying to stop smoking, how many people fail at that and go back to it? Yeah, almost everybody. There's a few people out there, you can talk to them, and they did the cold turkey. They got to that, whatever it was, and they're like, not doing any more. Threw it away, that was it, right? They never smoked another one again. Most people, that's not the case. Most people, they try, and they go for a day, or they go for a few days, or whatever, and they get right back into it. Next time they try, they got some other strategies, and they might make it a week or two. Sometimes they're a month and a few months, or maybe a few years, and then some stressful something comes along, and they're right back to it. What do you do when you fall on your face? Right? Yeah, well, you get back up. So we're going to talk about getting back up tomorrow. It's beautiful. It's really beautiful because we really beat ourselves up and God doesn't. And we want to see how He doesn't beat us up when we fall down and how we get back up. And so we're going to be talking about that on Saturday night at 6 o'clock here. And then remember, Sunday, 2 o'clock to 5 o'clock, kitchen cabinet remedies. So we're going to be looking at simple things like cabbage and onions and garlic and, hang on, let's see, we talked about turmeric already, didn't we? So we probably won't cover turmeric again. Let's see, what are some other things that are there? Parsley is good for some good stuff too. And cilantro is good too. What is cilantro good for? Mexican food. It's more than that too. That's cilantro and parsley are some of your best plant-based chelators. So if you need some kind of chelation therapy because of like heavy metal issues or whatever, cilantro and parsley, good stuff. And so there's other things that you can use that you have in your cabinets that are really good for helping with certain conditions and so on. And so that'll be 2 o'clock to 5 o'clock on Sunday in the back downstairs. And we'd love to see you then. Also, reminder, if anybody wants extra copies of the Law of Life book, they'll be available afterwards for $10. They're usually $15, but and if you want to get them and give them away to friends and family and so on, it's good stuff, I think. Of course, I'm biased, and it's a biased opinion. I will tell you right now, it is a biased opinion. I don't know, I'm working on how to be not biased, but the Lord's still working on me on a lot of stuff. So, questions? Do we got time for questions and answers? Questions? Any questions? It can be about anything. All right. So we're coming with the microphone so that they can hear you, and it can be recorded for eternity. Well, at least till Jesus comes. Well, no, it'll be on the books of heaven too, so watch your questions.
When you was asking about things that affect you, I was thinking of tight shoes. But does tight clothing, how bad does those affect us when we wear those things that are tight?
Well, there are some case reports of individuals developing deep venous thrombosis or DVT associated with tight clothing, like biker shorts. And those are pretty, the spandex, not spandex, but neoprene basically biker shorts that for individuals who are doing like 10-speed biking or whatever on the road. And so there's been a couple of case reports of that where you've had hindrance of circulation because of that tightness that's going on up here, and then stasis of the bloodstream, and then developing a deep venous thrombosis, and then swelling and redness and so on there. There's a thing called tight pants syndrome, and tight pants syndrome is a condition where an individual can develop digestive issues, bloating, abdominal pain, and so on. That is related to wearing tight pants. And when you take the tight pants off, or you loosen things up, or you do suspenders or something like that, then the condition will usually go away within about a week to 2 weeks. There's another one that is called paresthesia. I don't remember the name of it. I thought I had it and I don't have it. But anyways, it's a condition where when you're wearing, especially like hip huggers, jeans that are hip huggers, or you're wearing a gun belt, or ballerinas with tutus or other things like that, it puts a lot of pressure right over here, and you have a nerve that's running right over that region, and you can develop pain, numbness, other types of issues associated with it. And the treatment for it is just take those tight things off, wear a dress, and well, not if you're a guy. Take those tight things off, and the nerve will usually recover within about 3 or 4 weeks. And so those are a number of things that are related with tight clothing. And tight shoes, oh yeah, lots of issues associated with tight shoes, especially if you have pointed shoes, pointed toes. Then the toes get jammed in together, and the large toe starts getting bent in where it's not supposed to, and there's an extra prominence that's there, and then you start having bony deposition in the area because of chronic inflammation, and you start developing bunions, right? And the treatment for bunions is surgery. You can develop hammer toe, or the toes are put together, and then one of them kind of does this because it gets smashed in between the other ones, and then it gets stuck up, and that one rubs on the top of the shoe, and it becomes nice and painful and problematic, and that's a surgical fix as well. You can develop a Morton's neuroma, where you have the nerves running in. This is not my foot, but I'm pretending it's my foot. And you have the nerves running in between the bones that are coming out to the toes, and you can get a lot of pressure and a lot of wear in that area, and then the nerve sheath will actually start growing and getting kind of round and knobby and inflamed in that area, and it feels like you're walking on a pebble, on a stone every time you step. But there's no pebble, there's no stone in your shoe, but it feels like it every time you're walking. It becomes problematic and so on. You can develop a pump bump. That's Hagelin's deformity on the back of the heel. Can become inflamed and painful and so on, and then you got to relieve that. And you know what the absolute worst is out there? I'm going to get myself in trouble, but that's okay. I'm okay getting in trouble. High heels. High heels are absolutely worst. Absolutely the worst. Platforms? Yeah, no, if it's the same throughout the shoe, that's not a big problem. Except that you might have a little bit of different dynamics with the weight that you're carrying with bringing up the foot. But otherwise, if it's flat, it's the differential in the toes versus the heels. So the higher the heels get compared to the toes, there's lots of stuff that happens. Just with a single inch difference, you increase the weight borne on the bottom of the metatarsals here at the base of the toes. You increase that by about 23%. 2 inches gets you around 50-some%. 3 inches get you around 70-some%, and so on. And then by the time you get to 6-inch stilettos, it's 100% down there. at the ends of the toes. And then there's all sorts of stuff that happens from there. It starts causing problems with the ankles. It starts shortening, if you wear high heels on a regular basis, it starts shortening the Achilles tendon so that you can't stretch it out all the way, and then things get really painful when you start actually walking on flat surfaces, and then it starts changing the dynamics of how you walk on your knees, and so your knees start wearing in a different location, and so you start developing knee pain. It changes the whole conformity of the spine when you're on high heels, and one of the things it does is it accentuates that back there, right? And so that's, so it causes a hyper lordosis of the spine, so you get an accentuated or an exaggerated curvature of the spine here, and then curvature of the butt there, and it puts you off balance, and so you can develop long-term back pain issues because of wearing. There's all sorts of stuff really, and then it impedes circulation and getting blood back to the heart from the feet because you're not doing proper contraction of the muscles in the calf and so on, and so that can lead to more spider veins and to varicose veins and all of that kind of stuff. You know what they did in Chinese history? Yeah? You remember what the Chinese used to do? Yeah, foot binding. Foot binding. The lotus foot was the ideal foot. The lotus foot was 3 3/4 inches long. 3 3/4 inches long foot. You know how you get a foot that's 3 3/4 inches long? You take the foot and you break it, and you bend it in the bones underneath. And then you bind it very tightly so that it remains that way, and then you take it out every once in a while and you rebind it, and then you take it out and then you rebind it, and then you take it out and you rebind it, and then eventually you permanently have the toes turned underneath and you have this short little knobby foot, and you walk around like this the rest of your life, right? And that was considered to be like sexy. That was status appeal. Because it was the court dancers in back in however long ago that it became, an appeal for, and then it was the nobility that saw that and liked that, and then you were more likely, to get married and to a higher status if you had your feet bound like that. And then eventually it got to be that nobody would even consider marrying you if you didn't have your feet bound like that. Oh man, the power of fashion is crazy. And of course, we have our own. It's called high heels. Power of fashion is crazy. We die for fashion. We kill ourselves for fashion. It's crazy. All right, sorry, I went off on a LaRonda. It was a tangent. I have a whole lecture on that, so it's. Yeah.
Is it detrimental to be a ballerina and to balance yourself on your big toe?
Is it detrimental to do that? Yeah, you were not made to stand on the end of your toe. You weren't. And how long does a ballerina have to train in order to overcome the pain of standing on one toe, right? And to be able to do that. No, you were not created for that. So yeah, there's a lot of foot problems that ballerinas develop by doing that. It's like high heels on steroids. It's like the highest high heel you could ever have. It's almost like putting an 8-inch on there and so yeah, it's that can be very problematic as well. All right, question here.
What about plantar fasciitis?
Plantar fasciitis, yes. That is a condition where the arch of the foot, the arch is made up of some very tough fibrous bands that run from the front of the heel and run to the base of the toes down here. And so that makes up the arch. Well, where it attaches right here at the base of the heel, that can become inflamed and painful, And then it can be very painful with walking, especially with going upstairs or downstairs and so on. It usually happens in individuals that are not fit, that are overweight, and have exerted themselves way beyond what they're used to being exerted, and doing so with poor footwear. It's the usual scenario for developing plantar fasciitis. Plantar fasciitis is usually made worse if you have hard, flat shoes. If you have hard, flat shoes, it's usually made worse. And it's better when you have something that is nice and cushioned, has a good arch support. And so some things that you can do for that is you can get some orthotic inserts for the shoes that help to offset some of the pressure from the foot in that area. And also stretching. Stretching is very helpful for plantar fasciitis. One of the easy ways of stretching, although I'm going to lose my balance, but anyways, if you've got a step or some kind of drop off like this and you can hold on to something, I don't have the opportunity to hold on to something, but anyways, stand on the edge of that and let your foot, your heel drop. Just let it drop and bear the weight on that and just let it pull. Feel it pulling through the arch. You might be there for a couple of minutes or so and let it really pull through there. If you don't have the opportunity for that, what you can do is you can get a towel, and while you're in bed or you're on the floor or something, and just wrap the towel around the base of your toes here and pull. And just feel it pull right there through the arch and hold it for about 2 minutes to 3 or 4 minutes, at least 2. And then you can do the other foot. And so do that in the morning, do that in the evening. Something else that helps quite a bit with plantar fasciitis is doing hot and cold alternating treatments to the feet. So doing a hot foot bath for about 3 minutes, an ice bath for 30 seconds, hot bath for 3 minutes, ice bath for 30 seconds, back and forth like that. That helps out quite a bit with it as well. I would also recommend taking turmeric internally because it's nice and anti-inflammatory. Ginger can be helpful as well with the pain. Lose weight. That's helpful too. Wear tennis shoes. Don't go barefoot when you got plantar fasciitis. It is not going to help. So you want nice, soft, cushiony, good arch support. And then let's see, what was the other thing? Oh, you can put a poultice on the foot too. So it's not as easy to do it right here as it is more towards the end of the foot, but you can make like a charcoal flaxseed poultice and put on the area, or a castor oil poultice and put it on the area, and then some plastic wrap around there, and then ace bandage to hold it in place. Sleep with it like that overnight. And then you can repeat that on a daily basis. And usually it takes weeks of treatment and being consistent with it before it goes away. Another question.
When a person has swollen legs and they wear the socks, the stockings, is that good?
Yeah, the pressure stockings. Yeah, so you have an individual that has edema. So they have edema, and then you have pressure stockings. First of all, edema, what that is, you have fluid that's, of course, in the blood vessels, and then you have fluid that gets out of the blood vessels and surrounds the cells so that the cells can get the nutrients and everything that they need, and then they can get rid of their metabolic byproducts, and then that fluid kind of gets back into the bloodstream, some of it into the lymphatics, and then gets taken away. And if that whole system is not working very well, then you can have an accumulation of fluid that happens around the tissues, and that's called edema. Well, that accumulation of fluid, there are a number of complications that develop because of that. If you have that edema for a long period of time, it begins inhibiting wound healing. And so the more edema that you have, the harder it is to heal from things. Sometimes you can have so much edema that you start leaking out of the skin. You get little breaks in the skin, and then fluid just starts leaking out of it. That's usually bad. It's a bad case of edema. And one of the reasons why let's see, part of the physics behind the development of edema is that in the small arteries, the arterioles, the pressure coming to the end of the capillaries is fairly high, relatively. It's relatively high. And that relatively high pressure causes a bit of the fluid to come out into the surrounding tissues. Then the pressure gradient gets less and less and less inside the blood vessels because more and more fluid goes out, but praise God, the proteins usually stay inside. And the pressure gradient gets less so that there becomes less pressure inside the blood vessels, and so more of the fluid starts coming back into the blood vessels towards the small vein side, the venule side. And so the greater pressure you have coming to the area, the more fluid's going to come out, and the greater pressure you have going away, the less fluid is going to come back into it. And so you end up having more edema. And so it has a lot to do with the pressure gradient between the inside of the blood vessels and the fluid on the outside of the blood vessels. So what the pressure stockings seek to do is to increase the amount of pressure that's around the tissues, so that there's a greater amount of pressure that's pushing the fluid back into the blood vessels so that it can be returned back to the heart, and with the lymphatics as well. And as long as you have a graded stocking, where it's got the greater pressure towards the toes and the less pressure as you go up, then it should be okay, because it's going to accomplish its function, and it's not necessarily going to be inhibiting blood flow where it causes blood clot problems. That would happen where if you had it in the opposite direction, where it's tighter up at the top and it's looser down below, then you start getting that constriction at the top. You have a lot of blood that's coming down here, and now it's trying to get back, but it's impeded because you've got this band of tightness that's going up above it. So they usually do a gradation of it where it has the higher pressure towards the toes, the lower pressure while it's coming up, and it can be helpful for edema. Yeah. Yes.
Can neuropathy be reversed?
Yes. So can neuropathy be reversed? It depends on what the neuropathy is caused by. For example, some individuals that come to our center, they have neuropathy because of chemotherapy. So they have post-chemo neuropathy. It depends on how close they are to the chemotherapy. Typically, when it comes to nerve damage, a year is about your cutoff, so what you've got at a year is about what you can expect to have. And so after a year of having chemotherapy and then having post-chemo neuropathy, then what you've got, what improvement you have at a year is about what you're going to expect. Now, when it comes to diabetes and diabetic neuropathy, definitely. That can be reversed, and we've got a number of cases of that where it's a diabetic neuropathy, and getting on top of the diabetes and getting that turned around, then the nerves start improving and responding to it. And in fact, one of our physicians, he's not with us now, but he used to do nerve conduction studies and EMGs, electromyograms. And so he would do nerve conduction studies on diabetics with neuropathy at the beginning of a session, and then he would repeat them about 2 weeks later. And there was a significant improvement in nerve function and nerve speed and so on, just in 2 weeks of changing diet, exercising, doing some hydrotherapy treatments, and so on. Now, there may be other different forms of neuropathy, and again, it depends on the cause as to how well that it responds to treatment. Most neuropathies will get better, some, but the one that responds the best that we know of is diabetes and diabetic neuropathy. Some of the things that can be done to help with neuropathy, one of those is doing alternating hot and cold treatments to the area where the neuropathy is at. Not more than about 103 degrees Fahrenheit, because you don't want to push that, but the cold can be fairly cold, and about 2 to 3 minutes hot, 30 seconds cold, 2 to 3 minutes hot, 30 seconds cold, back and forth like that, about 5 to 7 exchanges. Another thing that can be helpful is cayenne. Cayenne pepper. Mix a little bit of cayenne pepper either with coconut oil or olive oil or something like that. Well, not a little. You can be a little bit generous with the cayenne, but it needs to be not like a paste or anything like that. But you get it, and then let's say that the neuropathy is this arm. Well, then you get it, and you get that combination, and you rub it on the skin on that arm and get it all nice and rubbed in. You can either just cover it with some plastic wrap or a bandage or something like that, or a little bit of gauze or whatever. If it's hands, make sure you cover the hands with something that's protective that doesn't have cayenne on the outside, because what you want to do is you want to leave it on overnight while you're sleeping. And if you get it on your hands and you don't have some protective covering over it, you won't remember that you have it on your hands at night, and you'll do something like this or that, and then you won't be sleeping anymore because you just woke up with fire all in you. But if it's lower extremities, it's usually okay. So that cayenne actually helps to deplete substance P, and substance P is one of the chemical signal points for the nerves to transmit pain information, pain signals back. And so the cayenne, while it goes on hot at the beginning, it actually ends up then decreasing the amount of pain sensation that an individual has. Turmeric would be a good idea too internally because it's anti-inflammatory, and that can be beneficial. Some people think that soy lecithin has some benefit with the myelin sheath and the health of the neurons. It's the soy fat, basically. Let's see, what else? There's something somewhere back there that I'm trying to access, and the file cabinet's stuck. Yeah, not happening right now. But those are some things that you can do to help out with neuropathy. Yeah.
My neuropathy came from a pinched nerve, and once the nerve is dead, it does not return.
Yeah. So if you have a neuropathy because, let's say, for instance, you have a significant sciatica, and you've got a disc herniation, and the disc is herniated, it's pushed on the nerve. Of course, a nerve is typically hundreds to thousands of axons from different neurons that are running together to a similar location, typically. And the sciatic nerve is the biggest one. And anyway, so if you have a disc that comes out, and let's say the nerve is coming along here, and the disc pushes on that nerve, and it cuts off flow of cellular constituents down that axon, because the neuron for that, the cell body for that neuron is up in your spinal cord. And then the axon for that single cell can run all the way from your low back all the way down to your toes. It's the longest cells in the body. And they've got to be able to get their intracellular components and proteins and all sorts of stuff. They've got to get it all the way from the cell body all the way down to the ends. So there's a communication pathway. But it's slow. But if it gets pinched off and you don't get enough stuff to the end, then things start dying. And usually with neurons, especially on the periphery, it's less so in the brain, but especially in the periphery, when they die, and they're done for. So yes, if you have an impingement on a nerve that lasts long enough so that those components of the nerve die, yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and usually what you got at a year is what you're going to get when it comes to nerves and nerve recovery. Yeah. That's why neurosurgeons, sometimes they'll intervene really early when somebody has a sciatica, because there's evidence that the nerve is so impinged, so trapped, that you can't start controlling muscles, or you're losing all sensation or whatever, and they got to free that nerve up, or you're going to lose that function permanently.
There's a question here on Facebook. It says, can this be done for trigger points? It says having impingement. Yes.
Okay. Well, there's impingement syndrome, which has to do with the shoulder. Doing what about trigger points? Are we talking about hot and cold? Are we talking about the treatments for neuropathy? If you have particular points that are painful, so somebody that has like a fibromyalgia or something like that, and they've got a bunch of points that are painful, yes, hot and cold, alternating hot and cold can be beneficial for that. If you have impingement syndrome in the shoulder, that's usually a problem between the clavicle, the end of the clavicle, and the acromion coming back from the shoulder, and there's not enough space there. It's kind of become inflamed, and bony prominences and so on have gotten tight, and so when you move a certain direction, it feels like you get stuck, and it's very painful, and so on. Hot and cold treatments, alternating back and forth, can be beneficial for that. Also, the poultices that we talked about, charcoal powder mixed with equal amount of flaxseed, ground flaxseed, with some water. Put it in a paper towel like a sandwich. It's the spread on the inside, and you put the sandwich on both sides. You can put it over the area. It's really hard to get it stuck on the area. How do you either have to tape it good to try to keep it in place, or you have to do some real gymnastics with ace bandage or something like that in order to try to get it to keep in place. But you would like to keep it on for at least 2 hours, or overnight, if you can, with the poultices. Castor oil on some paper towel as well could be beneficial. But with the impingement syndrome, a lot of it has to do with physical therapy and exercises, and a lot of movements related to it, and working on getting that range of motion back, and so on. And again, I'd recommend turmeric to take internally.
She's taking turmeric. That's what she's saying.
Yeah, and ginger might actually help too.
Ginger.
Quarter teaspoon of ginger 2 to 3 times a day. That can potentially help. Yes. Another one? No, we're fine.
Is there any new studies on optic nerve damage that it can be fixed?
Optic nerve damage and whether it can be fixed. Is there anything out there that's new? I don't know. There's so much research coming out. I don't know about that one. Like for Parkinson's disease, every day there are about 100 papers published on Parkinson's disease alone around the world. So if you just want to follow Parkinson's disease, you've got to read about 100 papers a day in order to keep up on it and the research that's out there. So it's crazy how much information is coming out. But yeah, I don't know about that, but optic nerve is kind of like the other nerves. So if it's not working, and if it's been a long time that it hasn't been working, like more than a year, then the likelihood of getting it back is pretty low. The most common cause for optic nerve issues is multiple sclerosis. So an individual developing multiple sclerosis and having an optic neuritis associated with that, and then having waxing and waning vision, and maybe even completely losing vision in one side, and then having improvements from that standpoint. If it's multiple sclerosis and it's something that's happening recently, that's one of the times where they rush you in. You go to the hospital, they start you on intravenous steroids and try to get that all under control so that they can get your vision back and so on. Of course, the steroids aren't I hate steroids. I actually hate steroids, but sometimes I look at it and I go, yeah, I don't know that we've got anything else that'll really do this right now. But I'm waiting for the day when we've researched everything and we can go, nope, don't need that, nope, don't need that, nope, don't need that, nope, don't need that. Oh, well, guess what? We don't need any of the pharmaceuticals. We've got everything natural. But I haven't found that yet. There's still some things where we don't know the natural stuff that can do what that can do in certain circumstances. So, yeah. And then over there.
Is there a narrowing of the opening that the nerve goes through a bone or something, and it starts to close up? Is there such a thing as that, or is it something else?
There is, especially when you talk about trigeminal neuralgia, where you end up with a fifth nerve palsy and significant pain in the face associated with it, or a seventh nerve palsy. There's part of the theory is that you end up having inflammation and swelling of the soft tissues inside of the bone where it goes through, and then that puts pressure on or compresses the nerve, and then you have all of this pain or lack of function on that side of the face associated with it, Horner syndrome. But I don't know that it's necessarily the bone itself gets smaller, unless maybe somebody has gigantism. What's the term for that? No, Andre the Giant? Anybody know Andre the Giant? Yeah. Well, he had this condition. That's the common term is gigantism. But anyways, the bones don't stop growing over time. They continue growing, and then they'll grow into where growth plates were, and then start deforming areas. So the forehead keeps growing. So the forehead gets bigger and gets bigger over time, and whatever. In that case, it might be that bone growth keeps going and actually makes that thing smaller. But usually, what it is that the soft tissues become inflamed, and then there's pressure inside of that space. And so sometimes what they'll do in those conditions is they'll go in there and they'll cut out more of the bone and open up the space so that there's not as much pressure, and sometimes that helps. But if the surgery doesn't remove the cause, but it takes care of the effect, then the cause will have to manifest itself some other way. So after the trigeminal neuralgia goes away, they have surgery, they feel better, and then something else pops up, seemingly unrelated, somewhere else. But the cause is still having to express itself. Yeah. We had over here.
If you have a tendons in your feet that, because of a lot of walking, have stretched, is there a treatment you could do to help that? Because when I walk now, my feet swell, and they checked me several years ago, and they told me that the tendons in there were damaged and stretched.
Okay. If you have tendons that are that have stretched, we do know that cold therapy, like ice packs, ice massage, other things like that, they tend to cause connective tissues to be a little bit tighter. Although cold just in and of itself, you're going to end up with cold feet at the end with that, so it might be better to do hot and cold back and forth. But the tightening of the tendon, or the loosening of the tendons, is not the cause for the swelling in the feet. The swelling in the feet is because of edema and additional fluids getting into the tissues. And that can be because of the lymphatic system that is not working appropriately, and so it's not removing the extra fluids from there. It can be because the kidneys aren't functioning the way that they're supposed to, and they're leaving too much fluid in the system. It can be because the heart is not functioning well, and there's increased pressure getting the blood back to the heart, and so that increased pressure gets communicated through the rest of the cardiovascular system, and eventually it gets high enough down there that fluid starts leaking out in the surrounding tissues. It could be because of prolonged inflammation, because inflammation causes the capillaries to be leaky and more fluid to get out into the surrounding tissues. But the two of them are two separate issues. All right. Well, thank you very much. We will be back Saturday night, and we're going to be looking about getting up and getting back up. and then getting to the conclusion of the matter. We're going to wrap everything up and then look at some exciting biblical examples of this. So let's pray while he dances. Hey, Anderson, we're going to pray. Dear Jesus, thank you so much for this day and your blessings, and we ask for safe travels and draw us close to you and help us to be more and more like you each and every day and to be as healthy as you want us to be, we pray in Jesus' name. Amen.